The Beyond Regulation project is about working with our farmers, working with our scientists and our community and bringing it all together. The landscape links together everything we do, so we spend a lot of focus on farm systems, but there's not a lot of work around our landscape.
Most farmers probably have been thinking ETS, greenhouse gas emissions, comes from a cow or comes from livestock, and the CO2 comes from diesel, petrol emissions. But we've never really considered the soil, the moisture of the soil, the properties of the soil, and how that can also have an impact on the greenhouse gas emissions.
Mother Nature may be responsible for at least twice the spatial variation in water quality and soil greenhouse gases than land use on its own. A really simple example is you might have a heavy soil. People talk about a heavy soil, might be clay versus a light soil which might be stony. Those two different soil types have a profound influence over whether or not you get soil greenhouse gases and also whether or not you get nitrate leaching. So the difference between them is really important, and the way you manage them is completely different as well.
The funding from this project came from the AgMart Food and Fibre Challenge Aotearoa. The funding that comes with it is $498,000, which will allow us to expand the work we do across catchment groups. We're looking at the whole of the Mataura, and that's probably relevant in Southland, and it'll probably have national significance.
This project will be a great benefit for individual farmers to know what their landscape does, giving the agricultural industry some options around how they levy the greenhouse gas emissions.
It's really important that we don't just end up with a whole lot of science that ends up on the bookshelf. Part of the rollout, we'll be looking at 3 case studies in the catchment, a sheep and beef and a dairy farm, looking across the Mataura about all the different opportunities that we've got around mitigation. And so people can start looking at possible outcomes from this work. The catchment communities can come and have a look at that information and go, oh, that would work in our catchment, that's interesting. There's no better way of building confidence in new ways of looking at things than actually people taking it up and having a go.
So it's complex, it's detailed, I haven't got my head around it, but starting to understand how farm management can have a real impact on reducing those greenhouse gas emissions if we can understand our landscape. From a farmer's perspective, it's very difficult to mitigate losses just from the livestock portion of greenhouse gases. So we need to be able to keep farming, we need to have that economic base that New Zealand has always had. So we need to now try and understand what the soil does and how that can help us and understand that.
Now, the way we're trying to get better control over the variability we see in soil is through using satellite information. So part of what we're trying to do is draw out some of the variability that farmers already recognise on their farm and try and integrate their knowledge with these high resolution data sets to tease out some of Mother Nature's variability. Because it's that variability on their farm, say the difference between a heavy soil and a light soil, which could make a world of difference in terms of their management response and as a result the environmental outcomes.
The key thing is putting the information with the people who are going to use it and letting them innovate with it. Here's the information, take that away and think about that, how you run your farm system over the top of your landscape. Start looking at the mitigations around methane emissions or nitrous oxide or water quality, and it takes on a whole different view. There's opportunities everywhere we look. And this project is taking it a step forward and looking across the board. It's about communities using the information, communities innovating and creating change.